네.
가장 기억에 남는 곳이 있다면 어디에 있을까요?
저는 출렁다리가 가장 기억에 남습니다. 너무 무서우니까 정신이 바짝 들더라고요. 그래서 재밌었던 것 같아요.
맞아요. 저도 거기가 제일 기억에 남았던 것 같아요. 붕어섬, 출렁다리 그쪽이 제일 재밌었던 것 같아요. 수현 씨는 어디가 제일 재밌었어요?
저는 피자 만들기 했을 때가 가장 재밌었던 것 같아요.
피자 만족하셨어요?
맛있었어요?
좋습니다, 좋습니다.
Hello, Ghosties. We are right now. We're in Imshil, and it's such a beautiful city. You guys should probably check out Imshil Cheese Festival and the 출렁다리. 꼭 와주세요. 파이팅. 바이바이.
イムシルというところはめちゃくちゃ周りに山が多くて目にいいと思います。だから日本の皆さんぜひイムシルというところに遊びに来てください。ありがとうございます。
앞서 친구들이 말한 것처럼 임실 너무나도 아름답고 또 멋진 도시니까 여러분들 꼭 오셔서 많은 추억 쌓아가셨으면 좋겠고 앞으로 저희 고스나인도 많이 사랑해 주셨으면 좋겠습니다. 감사하고 사랑합니다. Let's do the dance! 댄스타그램 임실로 놀러오세요! 바이바이! 바이바이!
You just move, baby. Move any way you need. How do you do it, darling? You got me on my knees, on my feet. You can take me to the left, baby. Take me to the right. You can take me further.
도시는 세계와 연결되어 문화를 창조했고 새로운 것을 받아들였다.
함께여서 우리는 더 자유롭고 더 멀리 갈 수 있어.
닫힌 문이 아니라 열린 질문으로.
나에게 에이펙은
자유,
융합,
국제성,
다양성, 포용,
개발.
신라의 정신이 에이펙 2025로 이어집니다.
and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. The United States has agreed to lower tariffs on Japanese automobiles to 15%. This is expected to put South Korean companies at a disadvantage in the U.S. market as they continue to face a much higher tariff of 25%. President Lee Jae-myung called for sweeping reforms to cut unnecessary regulations that discourage companies from doing business in South Korea, saying this is essential for the country's economic growth. U.S. and Chinese officials say they now reached a framework agreement over TikTok, saying the deal would address America's security concerns but maintain the Chinese characteristics of the short video app. The potential deal will likely be finalized on Friday in a call between the two countries' presidents. We begin in the United States, where South Korea's biggest competitor when it comes to auto exports, Japan, is set to begin receiving lower tariffs in the coming hours. The move comes as Seoul has yet to finalize details of a trade deal with Washington to lower tariffs to 15%, including cars. Our Kim Do-yeon starts us off.
A notice on the U.S. Federal Register has made it official. As of Tuesday U.S. time, the tariff on Japanese-made cars and auto parts will fall to 15%. That's a sharp drop from the 27.5% rate Japanese automakers had been paying, which included a 25% tariff under Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act. The decision immediately reshapes the competitive landscape in the U.S., one of the world's biggest auto markets. With negotiations on a $350 billion investment package ongoing, South Korean auto exports, the number one export to the U.S., will continue to face a 25% tariff. It leaves South Korean automakers, who are also subject to Section 232 tariffs, at a significant disadvantage, with South Korean and Japanese cars also competing in the same price groups. South Korea's Trade Minister Yo Han-gu is currently in Washington to finalize those talks. Negotiations have reportedly stalled over the terms of the investment deal. Minister Yo says he is focused on getting the lower rate applied as quickly as possible, but not at the expense of South Korea's national interest.
We are working to have the 15% rate applied as quickly as possible. This is a negotiation process, so rather than being swayed by every turn, we are focused on achieving a final result that we can accept.
Meanwhile, Yo also touched on the recent detention of Korean workers by U.S. immigration authorities at a Hyundai plant in Georgia.
It seems the U.S. side also feels its action was a bit excessive, and we will do our best to ensure the interests of our company are reflected.
The trade minister is expected to stay in Washington for 3 days as he works to finalize a deal on the critical tariff issue. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
So trade talks between South Korea and the United States remain deadlocked as the two sides remain far apart on how to manage and distribute profits from the $350 billion investment fund that South Korea has promised. And with tariffs on Japanese auto imports cut to 15% starting today, South Korean companies in the U.S. market are expected to feel the impact. For more on this, we're joined today by Dr. Pan Gil-ju, assistant professor at Korea National Diplomatic Academy. Professor Pan, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Pleased to be here.
So the top trade negotiator, Yo Han-gu, is now in Washington for another round of trade talks, after the industry minister returned home without securing an agreement with the United States. Do you think they'll be able to reach a deal this time?
To be honest with you, it's not going to be easy this time either. As you noted, there are big differences between Seoul and Washington in how to clarify South Korea's investment in the United States, particularly on profit distribution. The rock industry ministers come back without finalizing details shows how big these differences are between the two countries. In particular, Secretary Rotnick urges South Korea to reach an agreement with the United States under similar conditions that the United States established with Japan. Meanwhile, South Korea will find it hard to reach an agreement with the United States under the same terms as tariff negotiations between the United States and Japan because, first, those terms are not the win-win outcomes that South Korea wanted in the process of designing $350 billion investment projects. The U.S.-Japan agreement-like conditions are most likely to lead to U.S.-oriented profits, not win-win outcomes. To top it off, if the deal were reached in the U.S. favor, South Korea's foreign reserves would go down significantly. Since South Korea's foreign reserves are $410 billion, the U.S. demand would amount to around 90% of its foreign reserves. Second, timing is not good either, since the South Koreans who were arrested and detained in Georgia have just returned home. So it could aggravate anti-American sentiment if Seoul hurries to reach an agreement with Washington before grappling with this incident properly. Russia deals would not be helpful for alliance cohesion either. With this in mind, reaching a deal in short of a time frame is not going to be easy. However, the top trade negotiators' visit itself would be helpful to show the United States that South Korea is more than willing to reach an agreement. This show of willingness is helpful for alliance management as well as the ongoing deals. All in all, a long-term negotiation process is more feasible than a short-term deal, although tremendous efforts continue to go on.
I see. So I guess the two sides will need some more time. And the United States has been ramping up pressure on Seoul to sign the final trade agreement. But South Korea has been saying that it will not rush into any deal that undermines national interest. How might the stalled tariff talks affect Seoul's bilateral relations with Washington?
Obviously, the stalled tariff talks pose a challenge to ROK-U.S. alliance or relations. Well, as the United States takes its national interests as the most important under the MEGA approach, South Korea does too. The talks for win-win deals are supposed to take time, and these talks could be stalled from time to time in this long process. Meanwhile, when the U.S. rush to reach an agreement is taken into consideration, the United States might attempt to make the second case of India or the second case of Canada, which served as the worst case for the bilateral relationship if agreements were not reached early enough. If it takes place indeed, it is not only bad for their economies, but also unfavorable to both national and international security because the stalled talks send a misguided signal to countries in the League of Autocracies, such as North Korea and China. So both South Korea and the United States need to initiate a strategic dialogue between the deal-making efforts as part of risk management. Furthermore, South Korea needs to take advantage of the Make American Shipbuilding Great Again project to step up its leverage over the United States so that the United States will be more flexible with deal-making talks. Inherently, diplomacy is a two-level game where each government should keep an eye on both a domestic audience and a foreign counterpart. So both Seoul and Washington need to share this inherent mechanism of diplomacy through a strategic dialogue. Those efforts are better placed to lead to win-win outcomes for both countries. Moreover, the Georgia incident is obviously terrible and inhumane, but it serves as a driver to fundamentally resolve ingrained problems for their winning outcomes. In this sense, this painful incident provides lessons learned and a rare opportunity for improvement for their relations as well. All in all, the ongoing final trade agreement is not simply tariff talks, but a reference point to determine the cohesion and the health of the ROK-U.S. alliance.
Right, and President Lee Jae-myung will be traveling to New York next week for the UN General Assembly, where he could meet with President Donald Trump. Could Lee's trip provide an opportunity for the two countries to perhaps resolve some of their diplomatic issues?
Well, the second summit between the two leaders will be short because this diplomatic platform is made under the opportunity of multilateral diplomacy. So this summit would be a little different from the August summit, which took place in the White House. Despite this difference, Washington is most likely to take advantage of this platform in the aim of maximizing trade profits. In this vein, the second ROK-U.S. summit between the two leaders is feasible with an opportunity of the UN General Assembly. focusing more on reaching a detailed trade agreement. Meanwhile, South Korea could take advantage of the second summit for the diplomatic opportunity to make sure that Trump attends the APEC meeting, which will be hosted by South Korea at the end of next month. In this vein, there are some important issues that South Korea and the United States deal with in the possible diplomatic venue. All in all, I would say that this diplomatic venue is not simply important for the bilateral relationship, but also for regional and international security. Moreover, this diplomatic venue matters in the sense that the UN General Assembly will be held for the first time since the second Trump administration and the Yi administration took office. So South Korea needs to set up expanded diplomatic goals for attending the UN General Assembly with multi-layered objectives. First, South Korea's enhanced prestige. Second, a more cohesive bilateral alliance. Third, enhanced coordination among like-minded countries. And finally, the re-functioning UN and the normalizing rules-based order. These objectives will help South Korea rise to the global, developed strong power that the Rock administration pursues in terms of diplomatic strategy.
Right, I guess we'll have to see how the negotiations play out. All right, Dr. Pan, thank you so much for your insight today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
U.S. and Chinese officials have announced that they've reached a framework agreement on the ownership of TikTok's U.S. operations. U.S. President Donald Trump is now planning to speak with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping on Friday to possibly finalize the deal. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
Washington says the United States and China have reached a framework agreement on the future of TikTok's U.S. operations, a move that could end months of uncertainty over the popular social media platform. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent made the announcement during trade talks in Madrid on Monday, explaining that the framework lays the groundwork for American ownership of TikTok's U.S. arm.
We have a framework for a TikTok deal. The two leaders, President Trump and Party Chair Xi, will speak on Friday to complete the deal, but we do have a framework for a deal with TikTok.
In a post on his social media platform Truth Social, Trump wrote that the trade discussions had gone very well and would soon conclude. Without directly naming TikTok, he said an agreement had been reached with a certain company that young Americans were eager to see saved and predicted they would be very happy with the outcome. China confirmed that a framework agreement exists, but insisted that any deal would not come at the expense of its national interests or its companies.
Regarding the TikTok issue, China consistently opposes the politicization, instrumentalization, and weaponization of scientific, technological, and economic and trade issues. China will never seek to reach any agreement at the expense of its principled stance, corporate interests, and international fairness and justice.
The talks come as a critical deadline approaches. Under bipartisan legislation passed by the U.S. Congress last year, TikTok's Chinese parent company, ByteDance, must divest its American operations by September 17th or face a nationwide ban. The measure followed long-standing concerns in Washington that TikTok could share sensitive user data with Beijing, posing a national security threat. President Trump has already granted 3 extensions to the deadline, but pressure has continued to mount for a resolution. Trump also announced that he would hold phone talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping on Friday, while emphasizing the strong relations with Beijing. The phone talks could also spark a potential meeting between the two leaders during next month's APEC summit in South Korea. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The price of gold has seen its steepest surge since 1979, driven by economic uncertainty and inflation fears linked to the Trump administration's tariff policies. Now, that's according to the Wall Street Journal on Monday, which said gold hasn't rallied this much since the 1970s, when inflation soared worldwide following the Middle East oil shock. The price of gold jumped almost 40% this year, outpacing gains seen during the COVID-19 market crash, as well as the 2007 to 2009 financial crisis. The Wall Street Journal also said both small and large investors are flocking to gold as a hedge against growing uncertainty over the U.S. economic outlook and its role in the global economy. Meanwhile, here in Seoul, President Lee Jae-myung chaired an open debate on lowering regulatory burdens for South Korea's economic growth. Our top office correspondent Song Yoo-jin has this report.
Regulatory reform is the key to the growth of South Korea. Presiding over an open debate on Monday with ministers, business leaders, and lawmakers, President Lee Jae-myung called for sweeping changes to what he described as outdated, policymaker-centered rules.
불필요한 규제는 없애거나 축소하고 필요한 규제는 확대 강화하자. 복잡한 이해관계 또 부처 간의 입장의 차이 때문에 정말 거미줄처럼 규제들이 얽혀 있는데 이런 거미줄 규제를 좀 과감하게 확 걷어내자.
He singled out South Korea's punishment-heavy approach to corporate wrongdoing, calling it ineffective. He pointed to the breach of trust laws, saying it has dampened foreign investor sentiment toward the country.
그 결정을 잘못했는지 나중에 너 이렇게 했으면 훨씬 더 잘할 수 있었는데 왜 이렇게 해서 기업에 손해를 끼쳤어? 배임죄로 기소하잖아요. 그것도 유죄가 나서 감옥을 가요. 그 위험해서 어떻게 사업을 합니까? 판단과 결정을 자유롭게 하는 게 기업의 속성인데.
To address this, the finance minister proposed overhauling the system by strengthening financial accountability.
For minor violations, such as failing to file a simple report, we'll shift to administrative fines. If correct orders are followed, the government will accept them. Criminal punishment will only be applied if problems persist.
The discussion also highlighted regulatory hurdles facing emerging industries such as artificial intelligence and mobility. Proposals included creating a platform for data trading to address copyright and pricing issues and expanding test zones for self-driving vehicles. Currently, only 132 autonomous cars are operating in 47 pilot areas across South Korea, which lags far behind China and the U.S., where thousands of vehicles are being tested. Monday's debate marked the first of its kind under the Lee administration. The presidential office will establish a presidential committee for regulatory reform and hold follow-up debates to gather more opinions. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
In other news, the Veterans Affairs Ministry has invited U.S.-Korean War veterans to South Korea to express gratitude and honor their service. Our defense correspondent Kim Bo-kyung had a chance to talk to them.
Most Koreans are familiar with the Incheon landing, the operation commanded by General Douglas MacArthur to reverse the course of Korean War. Celebrating the 75th anniversary of this amphibious landing operation, the Navy held a ceremony on Monday at Incheon City Port. It is not just Koreans who consider the event meaningful, though. U.S.-Korean War veterans who were once stationed here felt the same way, too. Lois R. Quinn, who treated wounded soldiers aboard the hospital ship USS Haven in 1953 as part of the Navy Nurse Corps, was one of them. The 98-year-old was excited to be back in Korea for the first time in 72 years.
It's exciting, and I was trying to find out. I wanted to see where my ship was positioned for 8 months. We were anchored here for 8 months during the war, and then, like I say, after the armistice, they brought the POWs aboard, and we took the POWs back to the States. And we were due to come back the next year, but other things happened. But I have been keeping up with the South Koreans in California.
Rudy B. McKinn Sr., a former U.S. Marine who participated in the Incheon landing and the Battle of Chosun Reservoir, enjoyed the ceremony at the front row. He shared his story of how he got a Korean national flag from a Korean kid at that time, which is still hanging in his office.
And a little kid comes into the bivouac and says, "Is there anything you'd like for me to pick up for you?" He was looking for cigarettes or canned goods or something, anything we could give him. He was starving to death. So I said, "Yes, I would like a copy of, I would like a Korean flag." And he says, "I can get it for you."
The flag drawn on a rice sack was stained with blood from the Battle of Chosun Reservoir. It was framed the wrong way around, but as it's so fragile and weak, he says he just leaves it as it is. With memories of Korean War shared through veterans, our history lives on through the generations. 김보경, 아리랑 뉴스.
Good morning, I'm Choi Ji-hee, and this is The World Now. Starting in the United States, where President Donald Trump said on Monday that a second U.S. military strike on a Venezuelan drug cartel vessel killed 3 people. The strike took place earlier on the same day in international waters on Trump's orders and targeted what he called narco-terrorists transporting illegal drugs towards the U.S. The president described the target as a vessel linked to Venezuelan drug cartels carrying cocaine and fentanyl. U.S. officials released a video showing the vessel exploding and burning. This operation followed a previous strike on September 2nd, which killed 11 people aboard another Venezuelan vessel accused of illicit narcotics trafficking. Trump said the drug trafficking cartels pose a threat to U.S. national security. Meanwhile, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro strongly denounced the strike, saying the country would defend itself against U.S. aggression. The Kremlin said on Monday that NATO was already fighting against Russia with its support for Ukraine. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said at a press briefing in Moscow that NATO is at war with Russia. It is obvious and needs no proof. He argued that NATO's direct and indirect assistance to Ukraine through weapons, training, and intelligence is de facto warfare. Russian officials believe that by aiding Kyiv, NATO is morally and practically in military conflict with Russia. Meanwhile, the UK has ordered fighter jets to Poland as part of a NATO air defense mission following recent Russian drone incursions. The UK announced the deployment of RAF Typhoon jets to conduct air defense missions over Poland as part of NATO's Eastern Sentry mission. Poland has described recent Russian violations as deliberate provocations and threats to European security. Google's parent company Alphabet recorded a new landmark with its market capitalization surpassing $3 trillion for the first time on Monday. Its shares rose more than 4%, closing at a record high of nearly $252. This makes Alphabet the 4th company alongside Apple, Microsoft, and Nvidia to surpass the $3 trillion mark. Fueled by stronger than expected growth in its cloud division and a favorable U.S. court ruling earlier that spared Alphabet from having to sell its Chrome browser and Android operating system, it has witnessed a roughly 32 to 33% stock rise this year, outpacing the S&P's 12.5% gain. Finally, at the Tokyo World Athletics Championships on Monday, Armand Duplantis won his 3rd straight world title with a jump of 6.3 meters, breaking the pole vault world record for the 14th time. The 25-year-old American-born Swede had already secured the gold medal before attempting the new record and nailed the 6.3-meter mark on his 3rd and final attempt. The new record is a centimeter higher than his previous record height of 6.29 meters, which he achieved in Budapest last month. Duplantis told reporters after winning the gold that this is like very much extra special because this is our most important competition of the year.
It surely has been raining a lot lately. Let's talk about heavy passing showers first. Sudden downpours may strike anywhere nationwide with as little as 5 millimeters to as much as 60 millimeters. Showers may come with gusty winds, lightning, and at times rainfall rates near 30 millimeters per hour. Then from late tonight, heavier rain clouds will move in with rain pounding down across the central regions first. It could pour down up to 80 millimeters in the capital area, inland Gangwon-do province, as well as Jeju Island, as much as 60 millimeters in Chungcheong-do provinces and Jeollabuk-do province. Overnight, rainfall could intensify to around 20 millimeters per hour. But now, let's check on today's highs. Seoul will get up to 28 degrees Celsius, Daegu, Gyeongju very hot at 33 degrees. After the rain clears, cooler air will move in, dropping dropping temperatures to as low as 22 degrees Celsius by Friday here in Seoul. But highs will jump to the mid-20s by the weekend with more rain in the forecast over the next few days.
Now that is all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.
저는 만 5살에 바이올린을 시작했는데요. 바이올린 소리를 워낙 좋아했어서 그 특유의 따뜻함과 약간 사람의 목소리 같은 목소리를 갖고 있거든요, 바이올린이. 저는 무대에 올랐을 때보다는 이제 혼자 연습할 때 더 큰 희열을 느끼는데 제가 표현하고자 하는 음악이 잘 나왔을 때 그때 가장 큰 기쁨을 느끼는 것 같아요. 그래서 저만의 색깔을 어떻게 하면 찾아갈 수 있을까 그걸 제일 많이 고민하는 것 같아요. 아무래도 연습을 할 때는 이제 생각과 고민을 많이 하는 반면에 무대에서 연주할 때는 정말 머릿속을 비우고 아무 생각도 안 하려고 하는 것 같아요. 무대에서는 자유롭게 콩쿨 무대도 저만의 독주라고 생각하는 자세를 가지려고 하고 있어요. 사실 바이올린과는 거의 제 인생의 대부분을 같이 해왔기 때문에 저를 힘들게 할 때도 많지만 제가 가장 사랑하고 아끼는 존재입니다. 작곡가가 전달하고 싶은 메시지와 또 제 자신이 관객들에게 전달하고 싶은 메시지를 모두 다 설득력 있게 잘 전달할 수 있는 그런 연주자가 되고 싶습니다.
We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, new topics every day.
We are New Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Tuesday, September 16th here in Seoul. I'm Lee Soo-jin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Grace.
Great to be here.
Great to have you, and also Julian's with us.
Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday. And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. And as we step into the second day of the work week, let's take a closer look at what it means to be in your 20s. It's a time full of changes, challenges, and important decisions. And one of the biggest ones is employment, choosing which industry to pursue and where to begin your career. These days, it seems many Gen Zs have a lot of concerns about landing the right job, right, Grace?
Yes, that's right. Your 20s are definitely a formative decade for personal growth, self-discovery, and setting the foundation for your future through exploration and career building. And I've heard that many Gen Zers today are even relying on AI over their friends about their concerns. It seems like the major keywords that young people are consulting AI about are job searching, career path, and changing jobs.
Do you know which keyword that you might have asked AI?
I would have asked to see which industry right now are hiring the most employees, just to boost my chances of getting a job.
That's a smart question to ask. So, Julian, you're also a young person navigating all these choices right now. So how are you feeling about the process of finding the right career path?
Well, not to sound too frank, but it's not really easy for a lot of us Gen Zs to figure out the right career path. Now, reports have shown that the number of young people taking a break here in Korea from looking for jobs or working has reached 504,000, the highest has ever been. With a lot of unstable politics as well as economic downturn, Gen Zers don't really feel secure while trying to build their own career. I too can relate to a degree. Finding a job is challenging enough, but finding a job that aligns with your education and background as well as the things that you're looking for, such as pay, location, etc., it can really feel like finding a needle in a haystack these days. Yeah, but I honestly feel like it can feel really nerve-wracking trying to build that up, so I'm rooting for all of us looking for a job.
Have you used AI yet?
To look for jobs?
Or to help you with this process?
Well, I use AI to kind of help me make sure that the resume aligns with the job description, but other than that, not much.
So I think we can all agree that finding the right job is one of the biggest challenges for young people today. Being in your 20s comes with a lot of decisions and challenges. So today we're going to discuss what's really going on for young employees. So let's take a look at the screen to learn more about today's topic.
One of the biggest struggles young people face today is finding the right career path. But even after months and sometimes even years of searching, landing a job is just the first step. Many young employees are finding it increasingly difficult to stay in the same position long term, and employment retention among this generation is seeing a sharp decline. Today on News Generation, we'll explore why retention is low and what young people really want from their workplaces and which industries are considered more welcoming and open to hiring young talent.
As we just saw in the video, young people may be managing to land jobs, but staying in them has become an even bigger challenge. In fact, the employment rate for young people has been on a downward trend for 16 consecutive months, highlighting just how tough the job market is for them. To start us off, Grace, could you explain how employment in Korea looks overall right now, what the situation is like specifically for young workers?
Sure. In terms of the job market, the term youth refers to those aged 15 to 29. While the employment rate for all age groups rose last month compared to the same period last year, the number of employed youth decreased by 219,000. Furthermore, according to last year's survey, 60% of new employees quit within a year, indicating a significantly low employment retention rate for young people.
So more than half sounds like a crazy figure. And it's also a well-known fact that for many young Koreans, finding a job is anything but easy. There are countless reasons behind this, factors we've highlighted on the show before as well, from fierce competitions and also shifting workplace expectations as well. But what's even more concerning is that even when young people manage to secure a job, apparently many of them aren't staying for so long. So why is this even happening, Julian?
Well, there's a whole lot of reasons, but one of the biggest reasons is due to the economic downturn as uncertainty continues, companies can often be found cutting back on spending through workforce reduction. So in a nutshell, this basically means that hiring is down and layoffs are happening. So not only are these companies reducing hiring, but voluntary retirement from companies as well is increasing. So because of this, contract jobs is increasing, and even after getting employed as a contract worker, there are many cases one must resign involuntarily as well. So we can see that a lot of these jobs just aren't lasting as long for the Gen Z.
And that really shows how unstable the job market has become, especially for young people just trying to get their foot in the door. At the same time, Gen Z is approaching work with a very different set of values compared to previous generations. So when it comes to choosing a job today, what would you say are the main factors that Gen Z is prioritizing compared to the past grades?
Well, it is said that Gen Z is strongly inclined to consider factors like salary, career growth potential, and organizational culture when choosing their career. And while civil service was once highly sought after for its stable employment with guaranteed retirement, recent trends suggest a shift away from this due to the relatively low salary and limited growth opportunities. In fact, last year, for the first time in 18 years, the preference for civil service among young people fell to second place.
I also remember civil service being really popular among young people, so it's kind of surprising to see it go from first place to second place, right?
That's a big change.
Right. Do you know what's first place now then?
I believe it's the private sector.
That really explains, I guess the reason for that would be salary, I guess.
Salary. And I don't think that, like in the past, private sector companies are as rigid and strict as before. They offer a lot of benefits now, maybe even equal to the ones that the government offers.
So it's really interesting to see that shift happening. And that really shows how different today's job market is compared to the past. So stability alone just isn't enough to attract young workers anymore. So what kind of work conditions are Gen Zs and really looking for, do you think?
Yeah, it says that 9 out of 10 Gen Z job seekers also consider the in-house benefits of a company before applying. So let's take a look at the stats. According to recruitment platform Jinaksa Catch, 41% of Gen Z said they valued performance-based bonuses, even more so than a 4-day work week, which took up 19% of votes. Other benefits that followed were flexible leave or days off at 14%, summer and winter vacations at 7%, and miscellaneous benefits, including support for living expenses for the remaining 19%.
So the results that you just shared with us tells us that while flexible schedules and extra perks are certainly appreciated, young workers are really focused on tangible rewards that reflect their contributions and effort. But of course, it's not just about what they like. There are also certain company policies or benefits that Gen Z finds unappealing or even off-putting. So what kinds of workplace practices are turning them off, Julian?
Yeah, so company events that require mandatory attendance, such as sports competitions or workshops, are one of the workplace practices that Gen Zers strongly dislike. If basic provisions like the 5-day work week or 4 major social insurances as listed as welfare benefits, Gen Zers find this extremely frustrating because these are just reasonable, because Gen Zers aren't making unreasonable demands. We all want to feel mutual trust and respect, and because these benefits often don't address what Gen Zers are really looking for in a job, Gen Zers tend to prioritize stable jobs, especially in a weak economy when secure positions are just as more important as ever.
So now let's turn to our panelists here. So Grace, when it comes to workplace benefits, what do you value the most? And are there any perks or programs you wish your company would introduce to make work more rewarding?
Yeah, I mean, I would have to agree with the majority of the responses of the survey that I mentioned and say that bonuses would be the most rewarding incentive for me at my workplace. I mean, it just makes most sense because it gives you the freedom to use that money however you want. And another program or benefit that I would consider a really great perk would be letting people work during their lunch hour instead of making it like a mandatory lunch hour that you take, that's a part of your 8-hour workday. Yeah, because I don't have lunch plans every week. Sometimes I prefer just doing my work while eating. So that should just be considered part of my work hours.
Did you often find yourself working during that lunch hour?
Oh yeah, most of the time, I think 4 days out of the week, I'm just working while eating my lunch.
I mean, fair enough, because technically, it doesn't take a solid hour just to eat, so you end up doing work anyways.
Yes.
So I get that. So what about you, Julie? As someone who's currently looking for a job, what kind of company culture or benefits are most important to you?
Yeah, well, many of the benefits that we already discussed are definitely things I'd love to have when when working, such as a flexible work schedule and vacation time. But the most important thing that I look for in a workplace is to feel respected. Now, it might feel really basic to say, but I do want to feel like I'm treated as a professional. And I guess this really does apply to company culture. For example, instead of more of a hierarchical culture with clear chain of command with the manager telling the workers what to do exactly and no room to really discuss, I prefer a much more open, collaborative environment. And I also really do highly value a work culture that supports professional development and mutual respect.
So far, we've talked about how young workers are navigating today's challenging job market and what they're looking for in terms of workplace benefits. But to get a global perspective, we reached out to our viewers on the Arirang News YouTube channel and asked, which company benefit would you most like to see? And here are the results. So 49% of respondents ranked a 4-day work week as a top benefit, followed by performance bonuses at 39%. The child tuition support was selected by 10%, while money to spend on culture expenses was chosen by 2%. So the responses show a really interesting divide between those who want shorter, more flexible work schedules and those who want better rewards for their performances, and it really shows just how varied young workers' priorities are when it comes to choosing the right workplace. And to also gain a different perspective on this topic, we'll be speaking with someone who's actually working in HR. And that conversation will take place right after the break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out channel Arirang News. Click Posts. And cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us today is Sarah Park, Head of HR at Globalization Partners. Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So how do the types of jobs that young people actually want compare with the types of jobs that are actually available in the market?
That's such a great question, and it really highlights a key issue we're seeing not just in Korea, but globally. Many young people today are aiming for jobs that feel modern, meaningful, and future-oriented. Things like AI, content creation, sustainability, or roles at global startups. They're looking for flexibility, purpose, and the chance to grow quickly. When you look at the job market, especially in Korea, a lot of the openings are still more in the traditional sectors like manufacturing, sales, or those service-based roles. These might offer stability, but they don't always line up with what Gen Z is aspiring towards. So it's not that young people don't want to work, they really do. It's more that the jobs being created don't always reflect the kind of future that they're imagining for themselves.
Then, Sarah, what workplace benefits and perks are young workers prioritizing these days, and why do you think these matter to them?
A lot of the times, I think young people are prioritizing flexibility, things like hybrid work or shorter weeks that really we saw in that that panel that you just did, that those results. Those are what young people want to see. Obviously, at the end of the day, many are still focused on financial security because that is a necessity. We're talking about a generation facing rent rising, economic insecurity, and often student debt. So when a company offers clear financial incentives like performance-based bonus, it signals that hard work will be recognized in a tangible way. That matters, especially early in a career. And beyond the money aspect, they're looking for companies that invest in their development. Things like mental health support, mentorship, and real opportunities for growth. It's not about flashy perks anymore. It's about being seen, supported, and valued.
Great. So just to wrap things up, why do you think employment retention amongst young workers are low, and what can be done to address this issue?
Honestly, I think that a lot of young workers leave because there's a disconnect, because what they were promised may not actually be what they actually experience. They come in wanting to contribute, to learn, to be a part of something, but if the culture is rigid, the feedback is unclear, or the growth path feels non-existent, they'll walk away. You also have to remember, Gen Z sees work differently. They're not afraid to leave a job that doesn't serve them. They want alignment with their values, but if they feel ignored or stuck, they'll move on quickly. What really helps is simple. Just give them structure, give them support, and most important, listen to them. Regular check-ins, transparent leadership, and mentorship go a really long way. And if companies treat young talent as future leaders, not just entry-level workers, they'll stick around.
I really appreciate how you pointed out for a lot of young workers, they just want something that's actually that everyone deserves to be seen and appreciated. So thank you for highlighting that.
Thank you for letting me speak about it.
Thank you for joining us today as well. So we just talked to a human resource about someone who works in human resource about the challenges young workers face in today's job market and what companies can do to attract and retain talent. So far, we've discussed the challenges young people face in the job market and what they're looking for in the workplace. But we can't talk about jobs and work conditions today without addressing the impact of artificial intelligence. So Grace, how's a rise of AI affecting job opportunities for Gen Zs?
According to a Stanford University study, employment among workers in occupations with significant exposure to AI, such as customer service, accounting, and software development, has been the most affected, with a 13% decline in the employment rate for those aged 22 to 25 since 2022. And this suggests that AI could replace the knowledge and skills that are acquired during formal education, leaving young people particularly vulnerable. However, there are positive signs, such as the easing of political uncertainty in Korea following the presidential election and the stabilization of the business environment due to the lower interest rates globally, which is expected to lead to increased hiring.
So the job market does feel very competitive, but there's still areas with plenty of opportunities. And could you share which areas have these opportunities, Julie? I'm sure many people will be curious about this.
Yeah, well, just like you mentioned, the job market here in Korea feels very, very competitive, especially for the younger generation trying to land a job. However, there are still certain sectors with plenty of opportunities looking to hire young talent. One of them is the gaming industry, which aims to attract consumers through the fresh and innovative ideas of our generation. Also, on top of that, AI and semiconductors, which are receiving focused government investment, may also see expanded opportunities as well. So in any sector, there are opportunities, but those who understand the direction at first will be the ones to seize them.
Well said. So we've heard about the ups and downs of today's job market for young workers. And as we close, what message of encouragement would you like to share with those who are out there looking for the first or next opportunities? Great.
I remember being in my 20s and filled with uncertainty and discouragement. So I just want to encourage all of those who are searching for jobs to continue to keep your spirits up. Don't give up trying, especially now that prospects are expected to look up for the job market. And I also recommend taking any opportunity that you have to work, even if it's not something that you've dreamt of, since every experience is a valuable one. And companies will choose to hire experienced workers compared to those who don't have any experience at all.
Do you have an experience that really stands out to you before you landed your job where you are now?
I mean, I did a lot of jobs, like translating jobs, a lot of like tutoring jobs. I mean, that wasn't necessarily my dream job, but that still gave me experience. It still built my character. So I think, yeah, those were all really valuable experiences.
And they also opportunities for you to grow your skills as well.
Yes, and also network and meet people.
Right.
You just never know who could give you the next opportunity for a job.
And that's why people say it's not what you know, it's who you know sometimes.
Exactly.
It's really important to put yourself out there. So Julian, what about you?
Yeah, for those looking for their first or next opportunity, I can truly empathize. It can be terrifying as well as extremely anxiety-inducing to figure it out all on your own. I've been there myself, looking for jobs as a college student back home in California, and later navigating a completely different job market here in Seoul. While it's important to be proactive by building your skills or building your network, it's also really, really important to take time for yourself. Constant worry and stress about the future won't help, so just be kind to yourself and have faith that things will get better soon.
You had a really interesting experience because you looked for both jobs in California and in Korea. What do you think is a difference in that experience?
Well, the main difference that I found was the language, of course. But other than that, I feel like the job portals, the way that you apply for jobs is completely different too. Because back home in the U.S., we use LinkedIn. And Korea, LinkedIn is still relevant here, but things like Job Korea, for example, is more of a preferred site for looking for jobs.
So it's clear that today's young generation isn't just looking for a paycheck. They want meaningful work, opportunities to develop their skills, and workplaces that respect their values. And at the same time, we've seen that the market isn't always aligned with their expectations, which makes navigating careers even more challenging for young people. So it's important to remember to focus on your priorities and don't be discouraged by setbacks. Opportunities do exist. And for companies, it's a reminder that retaining talent means listening to what employees attendees really want and creating an environment where they can thrive. So this brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation, but we'll be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and conversations. Big thanks to Grace.
Thanks for having me.
For coming in, and Julian.
Thank you for also having me.
And to all our viewers, thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope you have the best day. We are
News Generation.
How to survive in Korea. Weddings. Step 0. Attire. As a guest, dress formal to business casual. Avoid wearing all white, shorts or going topless. Step 1. Arrival time. Arrive 30 minutes prior to the wedding ceremony. Too many cars, too many halls, too many people. There are many twists and turns. Take pictures and shake hands. And write your name vertically, not horizontally, in the guest book. Step 2. Or, shibor. 50,000 won, 100,000 won, 150,000 won. Cash gifts are given in these units. Decide on the amount based on your relationship. Write your name vertically on the envelope. Step 3. Wedding etiquette. Fill up the front row. Guests have 3 duties to fulfill: clapping, cheering, and taking pictures. Step 4. Dining. Take off your jacket. This will be your seat from now on. Start with the not your everyday delicacies. Kobe-jjim. Yes. Bosa. Yes. Chili shrimps. Definitely yes. Kimbap. Yeah. Only if you can't live without it. No need to pile up food. You have more than one opportunity. Did you survive the wedding? Wait,